Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Chat, the podcast where we help you learn English in a fun and easy way. I'm Sophia.
And I'm James. We're so excited to have you with us today. In this podcast, we'll be talking about how to start a conversation in English. This is an extremely crucial skill, especially if you're learning English and want to practice speaking.
That's right, James. We'll cover some basic tips and strategies. We'll also do a few role plays to show you how it's done. So, let's get started.
Starting a conversation can be a bit scary, but don't worry. We're here to help you. The first thing to remember is to smile. A friendly smile makes a big difference.
Absolutely, James. A smile can show that you are kind and open to talking. Now, let's talk about some easy ways to start a conversation. One of the simplest ways is to ask a question. Questions show that you are interested in the other person.
Good point, Sophia. Questions like, "How are you?" or "How's your day going?" are very common and easy to use. They're called icebreakers because they help to break the ice and make people feel comfortable.
Yes, and another great icebreaker is to talk about something around you. For example, if you're at a coffee shop, you could say, "This place has great coffee, don't you think?"
That's a good one. Talking about your surroundings is a natural way to start a conversation. You can also comment on the weather. It might sound simple, but people love talking about the weather. You could say, "It's such a nice day today."
Exactly, James. Now, let's do a quick role play to show our listeners how this works. I'll be a student in a coffee shop, and you can be a fellow student who wants to start a conversation.
Sounds good. Let's go.
This coffee is really good.
Hi there. I couldn't help but overhear. Do you come here often?
Hi, yes, I do. I love their coffee. How about you?
It's my first time here. I'm James, by the way.
Nice to meet you, James. I'm Sophia. So, what do you think of the place so far?
It seems really cozy. Do you study around here?
Yes, I do. I go to the university nearby. What about you?
I'm also a student there. It's great to meet another student here.
See, it's that simple. Just by asking a question and smiling, you can start a nice conversation.
Right, and don't worry if you feel nervous at first, it gets easier with practice. Just remember to be friendly and show interest in the other person.
Another important thing to remember is to listen carefully. When you ask a question, listen to the answer. This shows that you care about what the other person is saying.
Listening is key. It helps you think of more things to talk about. For example, if someone says they study at the university, you can ask what they are studying or if they like their classes.
That's a great point, James. Now, let's talk about another strategy. Compliments. Everyone loves a nice compliment. You could say something like, "I like your jacket," or "That's a nice bag."
Compliments are a great way to start a conversation. Just make sure they are sincere. People can tell if you're not being genuine.
Very true. And another tip is to talk about common interests. If you see someone reading a book you like, you can say, "I love that book. Have you read anything else by that author?"
Common interests are fantastic for starting conversations because they give you something to talk about right away. It makes the conversation flow more naturally.
We talked about smiling, asking questions, commenting on your surroundings, talking about the weather, giving compliments, and finding common interests.
That's a lot of good tips, Sophia, and remember, the most important thing is to practice. The more you practice, the easier it will become.
Absolutely. Practice makes perfect. So try these tips and see how they work for you. And we'll dive deeper into keeping the conversation going once you've started it.
We talked about how to start a conversation in English. Now, we'll be focusing on how to keep that conversation going. This is really important if you want to improve your English speaking skills.
Definitely, James. Starting a conversation is just the first step. Keeping it going is what makes the interaction meaningful and helps you build connections. So let's dive into our tips and strategies.
The first thing to remember is to be genuinely interested in the other person. Show that you care about what they're saying. One way to do this is by asking follow-up questions. For example, if someone says they like to play soccer, you can ask, "How long have you been playing soccer, or do you play on a team?"
Yes, follow-up questions are great because they show that you're listening and they give the other person a chance to share more about themselves. It keeps the conversation flowing naturally. Another tip is to share a bit about yourself, too. If someone talks about their hobby, you can mention yours. This creates a balance and makes the conversation two-sided.
That's a good point, Sophia. Sharing about yourself helps the other person get to know you, which can make the conversation more enjoyable for both of you. Now, let's talk about some phrases that can help keep the conversation going. Phrases like "tell me more about that" or "that sounds interesting. Can you explain a bit more?" show that you want to hear more.
Exactly, James. Another helpful phrase is, "What do you think about?" This can introduce a new topic related to what you're already discussing. For example, if you're talking about movies, you could say, "What do you think about the latest superhero movie?"
Great idea, Sophia. This kind of question invites the other person to share their opinion and keeps the conversation dynamic. It's also useful to give positive feedback during the conversation. Simple phrases like, "That's amazing," or "Really, that's so cool," encourage the other person to keep talking.
Positive feedback is very important. It shows that you're engaged and enjoying the conversation. Now, let's do a role play to demonstrate some of these tips. This time, we'll be two colleagues talking during a lunch break.
Sure, Sophia, let's go.
Hey, James, how's your day going?
Hey, Sophia, it's going well. Thanks. How about yours?
Pretty good, thanks. So, what did you do over the weekend?
I went hiking with some friends. We explored a new trail. It was really fun.
That sounds great. Which trail did you go to?
We went to Bear Mountain. Have you ever been there?
No, I haven't. Is it a difficult hike?
It's moderate. I'd say some parts are a bit steep, but the view at the top is amazing. What about you? Do you like hiking?
Yes, I do. I usually go hiking in the summer. Do you go hiking often?
Yes, whenever I get the chance, it's a great way to relax and enjoy nature. What's your favorite outdoor activity?
I love cycling. It's a great way to explore the city and stay fit. Do you cycle as well?
Occasionally, I prefer hiking, but cycling is fun too. Do you have a favorite cycling route?
Yes, there's a beautiful path along the river that I often take. It's really scenic, especially in the early morning.
That sounds lovely. Maybe I should try it out sometime. Do you cycle alone or with friends?
I usually cycle alone, but sometimes I join a group of friends. It's nice to have company. Do you hike alone or with a group?
Mostly with friends. It's more fun that way, and it feels safer too. Have you ever thought about joining a cycling club?
I have, actually. I think it would be fun to meet other cyclists and explore new routes together. Have you ever joined a hiking club?
Yes, I'm part of one. We organize trips every month. You should definitely join a cycling club. It's a great way to meet people with similar interests.
That sounds like a good idea. Thanks for the suggestion, James.
No problem, Sophia. Maybe we can go hiking together sometime.
I'd love that. Let's plan something soon. See how we kept the conversation going by asking questions, sharing our own experiences, and showing interest in each other's activities.
Exactly. We used follow-up questions and positive feedback to keep the conversation lively. Another thing we did was to introduce new topics related to what we were already talking about.
Yes, transitioning to new but related topics helps keep the conversation from becoming repetitive. For example, if you're talking about movies, you can transition to favorite actors or upcoming films.
Another useful tip is to be aware of the other person's body language and tone of voice. If they seem excited about a topic, encourage them to talk more about it. If they seem uninterested, you can gently steer the conversation in a different direction.
Good observation, James. Being mindful of nonverbal cues can really help in maintaining a pleasant conversation. And don't forget to share your own stories and experiences. It makes the interaction more engaging.
Sharing stories is a great way to build a connection. People love hearing about personal experiences because it makes the conversation more relatable.
Absolutely. And it's okay to take short pauses to think about what to say next. Don't feel pressured to fill every moment with words. Pauses can make the conversation feel more natural.
That's a great tip, Sophia. Pauses give you a moment to gather your thoughts and can actually make the conversation flow better.
So, to summarize, keeping a conversation going involves asking follow-up questions, sharing about yourself, giving positive feedback, being aware of nonverbal cues, and using pauses effectively.
That's right, and don't forget to practice. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become. Start with small conversations and gradually move to longer ones.
We hope these tips help you feel more comfortable keeping conversations going in English.
We talked about how to start and keep a conversation going. Now, we'll be focusing on how to end a conversation politely and effectively.
Ending a conversation can be just as important as starting one. A polite and smooth ending leaves a good impression and ensures that the other person feels respected and valued.
That's right, Sophia. Sometimes ending a conversation can be a bit tricky. You don't want to seem rude or abrupt, so we have some useful strategies to help you end conversations gracefully.
The first strategy is to use a closing statement. A closing statement signals that you need to wrap up the conversation. Simple phrases like, "It was great talking to you," or "I've really enjoyed our chat," work well. These phrases show appreciation for the conversation and make the other person feel good about the interaction.
Yes, closing statements are clear and polite. Another way to end a conversation is by mentioning a future meeting or follow-up. For example, you can say, "Let's catch up again soon," or "I'll email you about that." This not only ends the current conversation, but also indicates that you're interested in continuing the relationship in the future.
Mentioning a future meeting shows that you're interested in continuing the relationship, even though you need to end the conversation now. It's also a good idea to give a reason for ending the conversation. This makes it clear that you're not ending the conversation because you're bored or uninterested. For instance, you can say, "I have to get back to work," or "I have another appointment."
Giving a reason makes your ending seem more natural and less abrupt. It provides context and helps the other person understand why the conversation needs to end. Let's dive deeper into the kinds of reasons you can give. Common reasons include needing to go to another meeting, having prior commitments, or needing to finish some work.
Yes, and if you're in a social setting, you might say you need to catch up with someone else or that you have to leave to meet someone. These reasons are polite and understandable. Just make sure that whatever reason you give is truthful and respectful.
Now, let's talk about some specific phrases you can use to wrap up a conversation. Phrases like, "I won't take up any more of your time," or "I need to get going now," are polite and effective. These phrases acknowledge that the other person's time is valuable, which is a respectful way to indicate that the conversation is coming to an end.
These phrases are great because they are clear and respectful. Another useful strategy is to summarize the conversation. This is especially useful in professional settings. You can say, "So we've agreed to meet next week," or "I'll send you the report by Friday." Summarizing helps ensure that both parties are on the same page and provides a natural conclusion to the discussion.
Summarizing the conversation helps ensure that both parties are on the same page. It also provides a natural conclusion to the discussion. In addition to summarizing, it's important to express gratitude. Saying something like, "Thank you for your time," or "I appreciate your insights," leaves a positive impression.
Expressing gratitude shows that you value the interaction and the other person's time. It's a simple gesture that can make a big difference. Another tip is to use nonverbal cues to reinforce your verbal message that the conversation is ending. For example, you can gradually shift your body position, such as stepping back slightly or looking towards the direction you need to go.
Nonverbal cues are powerful. They can help reinforce the message that it's time to wrap up the conversation. Just make sure your body language remains friendly and open, even as you signal that the conversation is ending. It's also important to acknowledge everyone if you're ending a conversation in a group setting. You can say, "It was nice talking to all of you," or "I enjoyed our discussion."
Acknowledging everyone is crucial in group settings. It shows respect and appreciation for the group. Another aspect to consider is handling situations where the other person doesn't seem to get the hint that you need to end the conversation. This can be challenging, but it's important to remain polite and respectful.
In such cases, you might need to be a bit more direct. You can say, "I'd love to continue this conversation, but I really need to go now." Being direct yet polite helps ensure the other person understands your need to end the conversation without feeling offended.
If they persist, you can gently reiterate your need to leave by saying, "I'm really sorry, but I have to go. Let's catch up another time." Being clear and respectful helps prevent any misunderstandings. And don't forget to thank the person for the conversation. A simple thank you for the chat goes a long way.
Gratitude is always appreciated. So, to summarize, when ending a conversation, use closing statements, mention a future meeting, give a reason if needed, summarize the conversation, use positive body language, and be clear if the other person doesn't get the hint.
These strategies will help you end conversations politely and leave a good impression. And remember, it's all about practice. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. Another point to consider is cultural differences. In some cultures, ending a conversation might involve more formalities than in others. Be aware of these differences and adapt your approach accordingly.
That's a very good point, Sophia. Understanding cultural nuances can make a big difference in how your conversation endings are perceived. In some cultures, it might be common to have a longer goodbye process involving multiple rounds of farewells. In others, a brief and straightforward goodbye might be more typical.
Yes, and if you're unsure about the cultural norms, it's always a good idea to observe how others around you handle it and follow their lead. Also, consider the context of the conversation. For example, a professional setting might require a more formal ending compared to a casual chat with friends.
Absolutely. In professional settings, you might want to use more formal language and make sure you thank the person for their time and insights. In casual settings, you can be more relaxed and use informal language.
Another tip is to watch for natural pauses in the conversation. These pauses can provide a good opportunity to bring the conversation to a close. You can say, "Well, it's been great talking to you," during a natural lull in the discussion.
Natural pauses are great cues. They provide a moment where it's easier to transition to a closing statement without interrupting the flow of conversation. And sometimes, the other person might also be ready to end the conversation but is waiting for a polite way to do so.
That's so true, James. Being aware of these cues can help you end conversations at the right time, ensuring that both parties leave the interaction feeling positive. And let's not forget about digital conversations. Ending conversations politely is also important in emails and text messages.
Good point, Sophia. In digital communications, you can use phrases like, "Thank you for your time," or "I look forward to our next conversation." It's also polite to sign off with a friendly closing, like "Best regards" or "Take care."
Digital conversations often lack the nonverbal cues we rely on in face-to-face interactions, so it's important to be clear and explicit in your language. This helps prevent misunderstandings and ensures that your message is received as intended.
Exactly. Clarity is key in digital communications. And just like in face-to-face interactions, expressing gratitude and summarizing the main points are good practices to follow.
Let's go over the key points one more time. When ending a conversation, use closing statements, mention a future meeting, Give a reason if needed. Summarize the conversation. Use positive body language. Be clear if the other person doesn't get the hint. Be aware of cultural differences. Consider the context. Watch for natural pauses and apply these principles to digital communications as well.
These strategies will help you end conversations politely and effectively, leaving a positive impression on the other person.
We'll talk about dealing with difficult conversations and how to stay calm and polite.
So far, we've discussed how to start a conversation, keep it going, and end it politely. And now we'll be talking about handling difficult conversations. This can be one of the most challenging aspects of communication, but it's also incredibly important.
That's right, James. Difficult conversations can happen in both personal and professional settings. Whether it's giving constructive feedback, addressing a conflict, or discussing sensitive topics, knowing how to handle these situations calmly and respectfully is essential.
Absolutely. Let's start by discussing why difficult conversations can be so challenging. Often, it's because they involve strong emotions, differing opinions, or high stakes. People might fear causing offense or making the situation worse.
Exactly. The key to handling difficult conversations is preparation and a calm, respectful approach. One of the first steps is to prepare mentally. Understand the purpose of the conversation and what you hope to achieve. This helps you stay focused and clear about your goals.
Preparation is crucial. It's also helpful to consider the other person's perspective. Try to understand their feelings and concerns. This empathy can guide you in choosing the right words and tone for the conversation.
That's a great point, James. Empathy goes a long way in making difficult conversations more productive. Another important aspect is choosing the right time and place. Find a private and comfortable setting where you won't be interrupted. This shows respect for the other person and the seriousness of the conversation.
Timing and location are important. It's best to avoid having these conversations when either party is stressed, tired, or in a hurry. Now, let's talk about some strategies for actually conducting the conversation. One effective technique is to use I statements instead of you statements. For example, say I feel concerned about instead of you always.
Using I statements helps to express your feelings without sounding accusatory. It focuses on your experience rather than placing blame. Another strategy is to be clear and specific about the issue. Vague statements can lead to misunderstandings. For example, instead of saying you're not doing a good job, you could say, I've noticed that the reports are often late and it's affecting our deadlines.
Being specific helps the other person understand exactly what the issue is and what needs to change. It's also important to listen actively. Let the other person share their side of the story without interrupting. Show that you're listening by nodding, maintaining eye contact, and using phrases like, I understand or that makes sense.
Active listening not only shows respect, but also helps you understand the other person's perspective better. It can reveal underlying issues that might not be immediately apparent. After listening, it's useful to summarize what you've heard to ensure you've understood correctly. You can say, so what I'm hearing is that you're feeling frustrated because...
Summarizing helps clarify the situation and shows that you've been paying attention. Another useful approach is to stay calm and composed, even if the other person gets emotional. Keeping your emotions in check helps prevent the situation from escalating.
Staying calm is crucial. If you feel yourself getting upset, take a deep breath and pause before responding. It's okay to take a moment to collect your thoughts. If the conversation becomes too heated, it might be best to suggest taking a break and continuing later.
Taking a break can give both parties time to cool down and think more clearly. Now, let's discuss how to offer solutions. Instead of just pointing out problems, try to suggest ways to improve the situation. This can be a collaborative process where both parties contribute ideas.
Offering solutions shows that you're interested in resolving the issue, not just criticizing. It's also helpful to ask for the other person's input on how to move forward. For example, you could say, "What do you think we can do to improve this situation?"
Asking for input encourages cooperation and makes the other person feel valued. It turns the conversation into a joint effort to find a solution rather than a confrontation. Another important aspect is to follow up after the conversation. Check in with the person to see how things are going and to reinforce any agreements made during the discussion.
Following up shows that you're committed to making positive changes and that you care about the other person's progress. It also provides an opportunity to address any further issues that might arise. Now, let's summarize the key points for handling difficult conversations. 1. Prepare mentally. Understand your goals and consider the other person's perspective. 2. Choose the right time and place. Ensure a private, comfortable setting. 3. Use I statements. Express your feelings without sounding accusatory. 4. Be specific. Clearly describe the issue. 5. Listen actively. Show that you're paying attention and understand their perspective. 6. Stay calm. Keep your emotions in check and take breaks if needed. 7. Offer solutions. Suggest ways to improve the situation and ask for their input. 8. Follow up. Check in after the conversation to reinforce agreements and show commitment.
These strategies will help you handle difficult conversations more effectively and ensure they lead to positive outcomes. Let's also talk about some common scenarios where you might need to use these skills.
One common scenario is giving constructive feedback at work. For example, if a colleague's performance is affecting the team, it's important to address the issue respectfully. Start by acknowledging their efforts, then explain the specific issue and its impact, and finally, suggest ways to improve.
That's a great example, Sophia. Another scenario is resolving conflicts with friends or family. These conversations can be emotionally charged, so it's important to approach them with empathy and patience. Acknowledge the other person's feelings and share your own perspective without blaming them.
Yes, personal conflicts often require a lot of empathy and patience. Another scenario could be discussing sensitive topics, like finances or health issues. These conversations require a lot of tact and sensitivity. It's important to be honest, but also considerate of the other person's feelings.
Exactly, sensitive topics need to be handled with care. It's also important to know when to seek help. If a conversation becomes too difficult to handle on your own, it might be useful to involve a mediator or seek professional advice.
Seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. It shows that you're committed to finding a resolution. Another thing to remember is that it's okay to agree to disagree. Not all difficult conversations will end in complete agreement, and that's fine. The goal is to understand each other better and find common ground.
Agreeing to disagree is a mature way to handle differences. It's about respecting each other's viewpoints even if you don't fully agree. And lastly, always end the conversation on a positive note if possible. Thank the other person for the discussion and express your hope for a positive outcome.
Ending on a positive note helps leave the door open for future communication and reinforces the idea that the relationship is important, despite the difficulties. So, to wrap up our series, remember that communication is a skill that can always be improved. Whether you're starting, continuing, ending, or handling difficult conversations, practice and mindfulness are key.
Absolutely, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Every conversation is an opportunity to learn and grow. Thank you all for joining us on this journey to improve our English conversation skills.
We hope you found these tips helpful and feel more confident in your ability to communicate effectively in English. Keep practicing, stay patient, and remember to have fun with your conversations.
Thanks for listening. We look forward to sharing more tips and insights with you in future episodes. Bye for now.
Bye, until next time.